Constantine, CIA. I'm here on assignment.
You could have mentioned that back in port.
I have played many games during my years on this earth, but Far Cry 1 made me experience something that I have never felt before in a game: joy and hate with short second intervals. For example, in one moment I truly love the game. And I am fully invested in it. And then 1 second later, I start getting mad over how unfair the game is and rage quit to play again in a few hours later because the game is kind of, well, addicting. So, the premise of the game is that you play as Jack, who after escaping a boat explosion, swims to the nearby island where strange creatures and mercenaries try to kill him. After swimming inside an old Japanese World War II bunker and coming into contact with a scientist who needs your help to find a girl and find out what the hell is happening on this island. Welcome to Far Cry. Far Cry is a first-person shooter PC game developed by the German studio Crytek and published by Ubisoft. Crytek had developed a new game engine called CryEngine 1, where Far Cry would be their main game based on the engine. Much of Far Cry seems to have been based on the technology of a tech demo called Exile Dinosaur Island, which Crytek had made to showcase the capabilities of the Nvidia GeForce 3. The game featured some never-before-seen long views and drawing distances, a beautiful vegetation system and access to every level of territory without any loading screens whatsoever. There were also seamless transitions between indoor and outdoor areas. 2004 was one of the main pivotal years of FPS gaming, or even one of the best years of gaming ever. During 2004, many other heavy hitters such as Half-Life 2, Doom 3, Halo 2 and Unreal Tournament came out, which were all incredible FPS games and took the genre forward. The game was released on March 26, 2004 and garnered positive reviews from critics and fans alike, with a 89% on Metacritic. The game sold quite well despite being only released on PC and being quite demanding on the computer specs for its time. It had a tremendous financial success, selling 730,000 copies within only a few months of release. The game would later on be ported to the console, but this would take over 10 years. Being released in 2004, the game looks absolutely stunning, especially when you compare it to the same year's other FPS games, for example comparing it to Half-Life 2. And you know the developer Crytek? You have probably heard of them before, since they also made a Crysis series. And there used to be a joke on the internet that when someone bought a new computer, someone would ask, "But can it run Crysis though?" Since the game at the time looked unreal and you joked about how you needed a NASA computer to run it. And the nuke drop is still today one of the best animations in a game I have ever seen. So yeah, Far Cry was more or less a tech demo for Crytek, which refined the engine and created Crysis a few years later. Although the game is semi-open world, there is little incentive to explore off the beaten path, since ammo, health and armor are often only found at bases and enemy camps. Thus the game is quite linear in general, and you don't want to take any unnecessary risks of losing your health, so exploring is not recommended. When you swim, there is an active ocean life with fishes and air bubbles all around. Unfortunately, it's dark as hell in the water and it makes it hard to see where you are going. There are also a few animals that roam around the island, at least around the camps, like these pigs, but they don't really do anything and you gain nothing from them, so they're kinda useless to do anything with. The cutscenes look fairly well made, in a cheap B-movie sense, which I personally like it, but for 2004 they look great, and there are quite a lot of them spread throughout the game. Most of the graphics though have aged nicely compared to other games of its time. The jungle plants, the outside environments have aged beautifully. The problem though comes when you go inside. Not a lot of those graphics have aged well as the character models. They are not looking good. So, there are pretty much only two main areas you will be exploring in this game, and that's the jungle and inside corridors. There is also the ruins, the labs, the tree houses and lava world, and the time of the day changes with each level, where there are 20 in total. Most of the maps take place during the day. The foliage of the plant life look realistic and it does not move when you're interacting with it. And without an enemy tracker like in modern Far Cry games, it almost becomes a cat and mouse game with the enemy due to how well the green foliage covers people. The draw distance, although revolutionary for its time, unfortunately still has its flaws. You cannot generally see to a certain point, but if you use your sniper or binoculars, you can see stuff further away, or rather they just pop in. And this is especially bad when it comes to enemies who are far away with snipers or rocket launchers, and it would be really hard to see them. Of course, there's also a ton of fan service throughout the game, everything from Val just having to take a shower in the waterfall.
Just keep your eyes on the jungle, Jack.
Now that we've got some time to chat, you can fill me in on a few details.
Krieger was a top researcher at the Defense Department, specialized in genetics, protocols for human combat enhancement.
The Trigens.
Right.
Some of the cutscenes with Val, just rolling around, and of course you can't forget every Merc's most important item, Play Merc. The sound design in this game is excellent. All the weapons sound perfect. I swear I have heard the sound effect of many of these weapons in other games. The issue though is that it's hard to even out the music and SFX sounds because there are so many moments throughout the game when I'm sneaking for my life, listening carefully to the footsteps since I can't see anything in the jungle, especially at night, and when I'm trying to listen to the footstep I hear music blasting, making it really hard to focus on where the enemy is. And this is also a problem when it comes to cutscenes because they will speak too quiet, but you have to lower it because the overall volume is just too high. The atmospheric noise of animals and critters in the jungle is quite amazing. And when I think about it, almost every game that takes place in the jungle uses the same sounds. The voice acting in the game is, it's serviceable, with most performers putting in good work, although, since it's a spy thriller action game, it's not as if they had any challenges with the script.
You must be Jack.
How did you know that?
I've been expecting you. They've moved the girl. Get in. Get under there. If they see you, we're both dead.
Who's gonna see us?
You don't want to know.
But of course sound in Far Cry is quite essential, as the noise you make have a certain radius. When you run, you create a sound that enemies can hear. Shooting and using grenades create a radius of sound indicated on your compass. This radius is reduced if you don't sprint and instead crouch or crawl. You can zoom in with your binoculars to get certain sound bits from the enemies just talking with each other about that damn pig again. However, there is a drawback to this. The binoculars pick up any sound from far away, from heavy footsteps to machinery to cars, which kills your ears. And as I said earlier, it's quite challenging to balance the music from the sound effects, so even though I wanna just zoom in and listen to conversations, the sound just kills my ears and I don't really wanna listen to it anymore. The gameplay of Far Cry is its main selling point, and it kind of delivered on that. Being able to tackle the most open world encounters in many different ways makes you appreciate the game's AI and map structure. The game features no map, you only have a radar on the bottom screen to follow. You always know where to go though, as it will have an arrow pointing to where you need to go next. The objectives are clear, and you only need to press tab to see what the objectives are. Now the game has a standard walking animation, you can also sprint, crouch, jump and go prone. And furthermore you can also sway right and left, giving you the ability to lean out of cover without being killed in seconds. There is also a wide array of vehicles that you can use, such as trucks, boats, gunboats and jeeps, and most of these vehicles have weapons attached to them that you can use while driving, and some of them even have alternative fire, well, more or less RPGs. Each vehicle also has a health bar, and when it goes to 0 equals boom. The handling is fine, although a little clunky since a lot of the gameplay sections are quite cramped and you never really feel like you have a lot of freedom to drive around. And of course, this is also the game that started the hang gliders, which would become a staple of the Far Cry franchise.
The communication network is down. It'll take hours for them to restore their systems to normal. Until they do, you should be able to move around much more easily. I'm on a tight beam to you, so our
And what I find funny is that you are totally able to aim and shoot at anything while using the hang gliders, which you're not able to do in Far Cry 3. You know, I just wonder where or what is Jack holding on to. I believe the game would have fared much better if it had implemented a quick save option. Although the autosave system is, it's quite good. Some sections are too long or too hard without a save point, and replaying these just feel awful and you will rage about it. Especially since the game comes to a crawl when you have not had a checkpoint in ages, you are low on health and armor, and you start crouching very slowly because you don't want to die. It adds to the suspense, but man, when you die, you will rage quit. The stealth and sight range in this game is some of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. Sometimes the enemies act realistic as they don't see you, sometimes they are brain dead, and sometimes they know exactly where you are even when you are being stealthy. Enemies in turrets and towers can see you from miles away and can pinpoint your location and track every single merc towards you for absolutely no reason, and this is even when you go prone and go towards it. It's just really weird. And I swear this game made me more scared of its enemies than actual horror games, just due to the fact that a single enemy could kill me if I don't see him first. And throughout the game, you are taught not to walk through vent smoke, as it will either periodically deal damage to you or just instantly kill you. And when you have not had a save point in a long time, you are confused as to where to go next. And so I was confused that you need to actually walk through this vent smoke that deals no damage to progress, and I ran around for around 20 minutes thinking, I must be doing something wrong. I must be stupid. You can't walk through vent smoke. I must have missed a path or a door or something, but no, you had to actually walk through the vent smoke, which has previously killed you at every touch. So I wonder, what the hell were the developers thinking here? And the damage from enemies is absolutely ridiculous. I played on medium, and I could sometimes get killed in seconds when I had full health and armor from just one enemy if he sprayed me with lead flanking me. And the mutants are even worse. The melee ones can kill you in 1 or 2 hits, and they take a lot of damage to kill. And when one enemy sees you, everyone knows your last location and will zone in on you. On the other hand, sometimes when they work as intended, you see them slowly sneak around the jungle trying to find you or flank you, and this is quite impressive for the AI, and it becomes kinda creepy when you can't see anything in front of you but you hear the footsteps coming closer and closer, and I can't tell you how many times I ended up being melee ranged against many enemies due to them just searching for me but not seeing me. You can also swim in the game. You often do it to hide from enemies or just to be stealthy. Unfortunately, the swimming in the game sucks, but especially since it's an FPS game, you swirl around like crazy for some reason when swimming, and trying to go straight is near impossible. And unlike many games, you can shoot through many things, which is excellent, but it's also awful, because the tents and wooden barracks have enemies shoot through them because they know exactly where you are inside, while you have no idea where the enemy is. One of the earlier gameplay sections, I think it's level 3, you board a ship and climb to the top, where you are met with a helicopter and a bunch of mercs, and this is probably the segment where most players quit. And the most challenging and most annoying part of this game is the ladder climbing, and I swear you have to spend 5 seconds trying to get off that ladder when you are at the top, and this makes you a prime target for the enemies and you will get killed in seconds. And of course, in this section with the helicopter, you need to kill the helicopter, you need to kill around 10 mercs, and they all have great positioning to kill you, and I don't understand what the hell they were thinking, and this is why difficulty spikes is so prevalent in this game. There are also on-rails vehicle sections towards the latter stage of the game, and my god, this is awful. In it you fight enemy trucks and helicopters, and if you do not kill the enemies instantly, they will kill you or deal enough damage so that later enemies will kill you, and this section I had to replay around 5 to 6 times, and if I missed a single RPG rocket, just game over, man. And of course, the enemy placement when it comes to the mutants is sometimes really unfair. You are going to meet rocket launcher monsters in tight corridors, and yeah, that's fun, and they also roam in the open world, making it super hard to avoid them. The enemy variety of the game is quite good, with a wide variety of human enemies, or well, they have different outfits at least. And there is everything from scientists who hold handguns but die in one hit, to special forces that have excellent body armor and needs to be taken down more or less with headshots. And there is a bunch of different commando units, snipers, RPG enemies, himbos, Rambo wannabe knockoffs. And then there are also the enemy helicopters, jeeps, gunboats that patrol the island, and you can either destroy these and make them explode, or just kill the passengers and then take their vehicle. With the helicopters, you can simply kill the gun handler and the helicopter will start to fly away, but you can also just pump them full of lead and they will explode after some time. There are also more advanced helis that will drop enemies, or rather enemies dropping with ropes. And so there is also another faction in the game, the mutants, or as the game calls them, Trigens. And these also have quite a variety with them, with the monkey mutants that deal much melee damage, they're pretty fast and they jump at you, and they need a considerable amount of bullets to kill. And they also have a bigger brother, which it's pretty much the same, but just bigger. Later on in the game you will meet mutants who are human-like, they hold weapons like any other enemy, however they take an extremely suspicious amount of bullets to kill, which feels so weird, and they are also acrobatic as they can do backflips in the air and jump to better locations. And some of these are also invisible, and you can see them if you listen or focus with your eyes, but I recommend using the thermal goggles to see them. You can use them anytime during the later stage of the game, and you can see every enemy in infrared. And lastly, there are the big boys. And my god, these enemies were made by Satan himself, and they are the tankiest enemies in the game. There are 2 versions of them, the melee versions and the rocket arm ones, and you are going to have to waste a ton of ammo to kill these enemies, and they become even more annoying as they are often put in tight corridors with barely any space to dodge their attacks. But just like in Halo, where the Flood, the Marines and the Covenant fight each other in the open map, it's a spectacle to witness, and just seeing them fight until one faction wins, it has always been interesting to me. And Far Cry does that between the mercs and the mutants, and you can use this to your advantage by dwindling down their numbers so neither faction really gets the upper hand, they end up killing most of each other and may, thus making it easier for you. So there is a helicopter boss fight, which was genuinely just awful, where you need around 8 missiles to kill the helicopter, and worst of all, you are on a timer because the ship is sinking. And I tried this fight around 8, 9 times. And then I just said, okay, screw this, I'm not gonna stay on this ship, I'm just gonna swim to the nearest island, and then I killed it by hiding behind a palm tree. So yeah, just like in other Souls games, there is no real cheat to beat the game when the game cheats to beat you. There are not many FPS games that let you go prone, and this mode makes you the most silent as you crawl around, and it gives you also the best aim without any sway. It's mainly used with the sniper rifle, which reduces the sway to almost none. Though you will crunch for most of the game, running and gunning is quite awful unless you're at close range with your enemies, otherwise you're going to miss a lot. The game's unfairness comes through, especially during its final segment, where you get to at least load up in a fashion that would make Neo blush, where you can stock up on every weapon you might need, but once inside the semi-open terrain, your heart will sink. Because there are 4 mutants with assault rifles that will snipe you from afar if you try to move out, and there are also 4 tanky as hell mutants with rocket hands, and finally there is a bunch of human shield enemies defending the last boss, which is, well, just a scientist that goes down in a few bullets, but still, this level of difficulty was challenging. Oh, and guess what? Once you enter through the door, you are trapped, and when you fire a single shot, the mutants in the whole zone will close in on your position. So, if you're not fast enough killing the mutants who have the assault rifles, all the big enemies will come into melee range against you and you will die. So, you wanna take out the mutants with assault rifles first, go prone and snipe each of them down because they have super aim. You won't survive long unless you kill them. And then you wanna run into the open so you can dodge the missiles from the RPG enemies. You will run out of ammo after a while, but keep hitting them. After activating the elevator and going up, you get a checkpoint, so at this point, you have more or less finished the level. But I just wonder what the hell the developers were thinking when making this level. I get that you try to throw out everything you have at the last level, but this was just purely overkill and not fun at all. Enemies at more larger camps will also sound an alarm if you are spotted, drawing in even more enemies from nearby areas. They can only be turned off when they are active, so there's no reason to sneak into the camp and then disable the alarms like in future Far Cry games. And human enemies in the game exhibit advanced artificial intelligence, which can be favorable compared to other shooters of its time. The enemies are capable of navigating the large levels. They can also use vehicles and jump out of them when necessary. With the AI that Crytek made, the enemies now react dynamically to the player's tactics and actions. For example, if the player was hiding in a bush and fired on a mercenary, the mercenary, unable to return fire because the player's position is not known, would crouch and quickly sneak towards cover. And this is a great design, making the enemies question, where did the attack come from? However, Far Cry was also criticized by many for being poorly balanced around its difficulty. The difficulty increases sharply in the later levels with the introduction of the Trigens, causing many problems when combining with the game's checkpoint system, which eliminated manual saving, as I talked about before. The increased difficulty required stealth and precision to even up the odds against the Trigens, but many players found being forced to replay the same sections over and over and over again became extremely tedious and frustrating. The developers promised a quick save update, but it was never implemented in the game. The game has a wide array of weapons for its time, with 11 different ones to choose from. The most are useful throughout the game except for 2, the machete and the Glock. I don't understand why anyone would use the machete except for being able to run faster while having it equipped. And yeah, the running or walking speed is determined by the weapon you are carrying, so if you have your RPG or sniper equipped, you are gonna move like a snail. From the start of the game, you can have up to 4 weapons equipped, at all times, and you can swap between these easily by clicking from 1 to 4. And you can either find weapons at camps, armories, or dropped from enemies. I personally preferred my loadout with the sniper rifle, the machine gun, the OICW assault weapon, and the M4 assault weapon, as I felt the rocket launcher was quite useless, even though from what I have read from guides, people recommend that you always have one equipped, which I frankly disagree with. The sniper rifle is for sure the best weapon in the game, being able to take out enemies from afar without them being able to shoot back. And you don't want to spray and pray in this game. The recoil of most weapons is too much and you will miss a lot. Small bursts towards the enemy's torso or head is the most effective. And as I mentioned earlier with enemies, some will wear body armor later on, so it's just more effective to always aim for the head regardless of enemy. Between each level, you regain health and armor, and you keep all the weapons you have equipped with its ammo. And I quite like this system, instead of the ones where you gain new guns or you lose your previous ones. On the other hand, if you finish a level with all your ammo spent, the next level can be quite difficult, especially if there is a fight first thing happening, and especially on the level where the first enemy are 2 hulking rocket launcher mutants, which takes a lot of ammo to kill. And there is a ton of ammo spread throughout the map, and enemies will drop weapons and ammo as well. But most of the ammo is located inside of camps or armories, so running out of ammo in this game is quite unusual. Many of the weapons also has alternative fire modes, such as full auto or single shots, or switching from auto to high explosive ammo. Which I would like to see more in modern games, as I feel like modern games tend to have, more weapons to choose from, but they lack identity and they only do one thing good. And especially, not having any alternative fire modes. I think the Far Cry franchise is specifically guilty of this change towards the later installments, and I would like to see this old alternative fire modes come back. I hear many people like the silent submachine gun because it allows you to kill enemies without alerting others, and I like this gun for, maybe the early half of the game, but towards the later parts it became quite weak as it did not deal enough damage to deal with harder enemies. And there's no regenerating health in this game, the only way to regain it is with health packs, and you can pick these up throughout the game, and sometimes smaller ones from enemies. And the same goes for the armor. The armor is more or less health 2.0. Aiming in this game is great or awful. The bigger weapons like the RPG feel useless and too big. Furthermore, this game is a lot about movement. When you are spotted, you want to move away from your location. Moving while aiming with your scope is next to impossible. And if you want to move fast, you need to change your weapons. So you always want to be on the move in this game. And the story. My god, the story. Let's just say it's easily the weakest part of the game. With no real memorable characters, the plot is one of the most basic ones I've ever played. And the only hope I have is that the devs knew this story was shit on purpose, as it was a spy movie parody thing or something.
What is this? A bad spy movie? You two are gonna get us all killed.
Although I can still understand this, because during 2004, FPS games and stories were not a huge thing. And there were a lot of companies that just said screw the story, more bang bang and explosions and sexy ladies. Interestingly enough, Crytek released a game trailer to promote the CryEngine 1, which features more or less the insane Dr. Krieger doing his experiments and how and why Jack's boat got attacked. Although the character models for Jack and Val are different from the official release, same goes for the boat name. Anyway, the story now. What does the manual say? I like when you had a manual when you bought a game. And you can still get these when you buy games from Steam, at least in older ones. And it tells you about the names of characters, different weapons, the vehicles, and story, etc. So I like them. Anyway, Jack Carver has left his mysterious and bitter past behind him. He used to be an ex-Special Forces operative, but dropped out of society to run a boat charter business in the South Pacific. He is hired by a female journalist named Val, and she wants Jack to take her to a secretly uncharted island in Micronesia. After Val takes off on her own with a jet ski, Jack's boat is blown apart by a rocket, but he survives by diving into the water. And this opening cutscene, is really intense. It feels like a really cheap movie, but for real, I am not sure if Jack has amnesia since he saw these mutant creatures in the opening cutscene and then acts surprised when he sees them for the first time in the labs. I'm just going to assume that he thought he saw these things, but it was too dark outside and he could not get a close look at the creatures and thought they were just primates of some kind. And also, they look kind of different in the opening cutscene and how they look in the game, where they look more or less like some kind of hybrid monkey or gorilla of some sort. Anyway, Jack finds a communicator where he is contacted by a man named Doyle, who wants Jack to find Val, and in return he will help him escape the island. Jack travels across various islands, battle mercenaries in search of Val. Through encounters with Trigens, the genetically altered beasts, and information from Doyle, Jack soon discovers that the island is part of an experiment involving genetic modification, the future of mankind, and how Krieger is just advancing it. It's funded by the genetic company Krieger Corp and led by its CEO, Dr. Krieger. And I know it's a stereotype to have a German play the crazy doctor who is willing to cross any line or rules for his experiments. But I've always been weak to this kind of trope. As the game progresses, it becomes clear that the Trigens who are running loose are becoming too much of a problem for the mercenaries to handle, as they are spreading faster than expected and manage to escape the testing facilities. And we see this in a cutscene later on towards the end where the mutants are everywhere on the island killing all the mercs. But it's also different mutants, as the experiments were not limited to just primates, but have moved on to mutating humans. And god, I hate these enemies. When Jack finally catches up to Val, she is taken to another area by helicopter, stopped by Jack. And after a brief struggle on board of the aircraft, Val tells Jack to jump for it, kicking him in the face, and they both fall from the helicopter as it explodes. After they both swim ashore, Val reveals that she is an undercover CIA agent investigating Krieger's operations. After further exploration, Jack must again search for and rescue Val, while the human Trigens have escaped, freed by Jack. And they have more or less begun a revolt against the mercenaries on the island, so you pretty much save Val a few too many times this game, and it gets really tropey after a while. And after rescuing Val once again, they split up again and reunite when Jack has killed the mercenary commander Crow. The guy who was the annoying ass helicopter gunner from that mission. Information Crow had with him indicates that Krieger had a tactical nuke on the island which he intends to use as a last resort in covering up his tracks. After the Department of Defense has supposedly analyzed the situation, Jack and Val steals the nuclear weapon, despite Jack's protests, of course, because holy shit, I do not want to handle a nuclear weapon. And before entering the factory, Doyle warns that the mutagen might infect them when the blast goes off, and he advises them to take a mutagen-resistant serum before arming the nuke. And inside a factory they do so and they arm the nuke. And this becomes the first ever hold this position and defend this area for a certain amount of time. And there is a ton of shield enemies that comes towards you, but thank god you have a good vantage point to just go prone and aim for the heads as they come, one by one in a line. And the machine gun just works wonders here. After defending Val, setting up the nuke, they escape through the elevator and the nuke detonates directly behind Jack and Val as they exit the factory, leaving both of them unconscious. And while they are unconscious, Krieger captures them, and before leaving for his main base in a helicopter, and I'm sure by now that the game story is a parody of spy movies because of course instead of killing Jack right there, he kicks him off the aircraft because there's no way he's gonna survive up there on the island.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
And Jack now has to fight through the Trigen infested area to rescue Val and escape the island with his life. And this section is quite interesting as you're only handed a M4 with 1 mag in it, and the first thing you see is a mutant enemy. You jump down the waterfall, and this is more or less the game's first ever stealth level, where you need to follow the river to a downed helicopter where you can pick up some items and use the machine gun turrets. But after reaching the mercenaries' weapon cache, Jack notices that his arm is turning green, kind of like the Hulk. Doyle responds that the mutagen concentration in the air might be too intense for the antidote, but Krieger is working on a cure in the laboratory nearby. Jack is thus directed to find Krieger and kill him. And Krieger, who has injected himself with the mutagen, has become more or less a monster, and this boss fight is just awful. And first of all, you have Krieger as this huge shocking monster. He has many enemies that assist him with shields, and the worst part is the starting position of the level, as you are stuck behind a desk with enemies on all sides. I somehow managed to bait Krieger to come to me, where I unleashed 2 full magazines on his head before he could shoot back. With his dying breath, Krieger reveals that there is no cure for the mutagen. Doyle reveals that the antidote they took earlier was the mutagen they were trying to protect themselves from, and he plans to sell the mutagen formula on the black market before fleeing, so yeah, it's a classic. The guy that helped you at the start backstabs you because he wants profit. Yeah. And I swear the tropes in this game has to be intentional. After battling a horde of Trigens in that super unfair fight I talked about earlier, Jack catches up to Doyle and kills him. Jack then escapes just before the volcano erupts, where Krieger's main offices are located. Both he and Val are cured of the mutagen, and they manage to sail off on a boat into the sunset. Not before we get a reveal on what name Far Cry actually means, as it was an experiment that was called that name. And this actually really changed my perception of the game series name, because man, Far Cry installments afterwards sounds really weird with this context in mind. So, to summarize, Far Cry 1 is a phenomenal game in its own right, which helped push the technology forward, and most importantly, without it we would not have had the Far Cry franchise. But as we will see, when Ubisoft took over the development of the franchise, they did not follow Crytek's vision and they went their own way instead, and the future Far Cry games shares little DNA with its forefather. Through this review, I have been quite positive about certain aspects, but also very critical of others. And as stated at the start, my issue with this game is that it is so polarized, because sometimes it works and sometimes it's broken. Sometimes stealth and enemy sight range works perfectly. Sometimes they have all-seeing vision, and sometimes the AI is brain dead. Sometimes everything is going great, you have killed every enemy, and then suddenly one ambushes you and kills you in seconds, and you have to restart to 30 minutes before. But I still came back. I wanted to finish this game, and when it works as intended, the game is great. It has aged well in many aspects, such as its gameplay, graphics, and sound design. But can I recommend this game though? I can recommend it to people who like older titles, the FPS games, or just want to know some history behind the FPS genre. The game runs great on modern PCs. I had 0 technical problems through the 9 hours it took me to complete the game. Now this was only the first Far Cry review, but I will review the rest once in succession. Now, I will only review the main titles, but Primal, New Dawn, and maybe Blood Dragon as well. Next up is either the best or the worst Far Cry game according to many. So bring your flamethrowers and malaria pills, because we are going to Africa next. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you in the next one, guys. Bye.
Listen, dirtbag, keep an eye out for some punk in a red Hawaiian shirt. If you see him, call me at once. Am I understood?
Yes, sir!
I'm heading out!